Hello, my name is Eric, and today I am very excited to be speaking with the great author Mircea Cărtărescu, who is staying here in London for a few days. Now, a couple of years ago, I read Mircea's novel Solenoid, which I felt was one of the most brilliant, wild and weird books that I have ever read, and it since went on to be listed for this year's International Booker Prize, and also it won the Dublin Literary Award and the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. And now, over the past few weeks, I've been completely engrossed in reading The Left Wing, which is the first book in Mircea's trilogy, Blinding, and it has just been published now in the UK, and it's translated by Sean Cotter. And it's not only wondrously creative and intellectually rigorous and stimulating, but I felt like the experience of reading this book was like physically tunneling through dimensions of our world, both the physical world of apartment blocks and hospital wards in Bucharest, but also through time and memory and dreams and surreal fantasies. And I think it is one of the most challenging books I have ever read. I'm not going to pretend at all to have understood much of what is in this book, but it is also mesmerizing, and it is also beautifully written and poetically written, and I found it soul-stirring because it gives a new way of approaching the nature and the meaning of existence. So I'm very excited to talk about this book with you today. And first, I'd like to ask, how would you categorize or summarize what is in this book? Or would you indeed resist doing that? Because in a way, it feels partly like a memoir, partly like a surreal novel, but actually that doesn't even begin to encompass what is in this book.
First I want to say hello to our audience, to all the people who watch us right now. I'm so happy to be here with you. And then I want to thank you for the beautiful words you had for my poor and humble work. It's hard for me to talk about my books. I never reread them. It's the same with Blinding, for example, who has been written more than 30 years ago, and I never reread it because I cannot stand to reread my books. The only reading that I give to my books is at the same time when I'm writing them. Because writing is not only writing, it's a process of reading/writing. Yeah. Anytime you write a book, you actually read it in advance, and read it for all the other readers that will follow. I started to write the trilogy, Blinding. In Romanian, the word is much more beautiful. The word is orbitor, which is a palindrome, orbit-or. You can read it the other way around.
Ah, yes.
Yes, and it has lots of other meanings than a very blinding light, because actually orbitor has, in my language, the meaning of mystical light. The light on the Mount Tabor, where Jesus changed his face, and the light that surrounds the illuminated and mystical persons in Tibet or in Agati and other mystical places. So it's an aura. It's an aura of light which surrounds our bodies. And besides, there are many other things that you can say about only one word. Or, bit, or. Or in French is gold. bit is information, a bit of information, you know. So or bit or could be a microchip surrounded by golden connections, you know. Some chips have gold connections. So it's a complex and beautiful word. But also I like blinding because it's powerful in my opinion. So I started this book in Amsterdam. I was a young professor at the University of Amsterdam by that time, an invited professor, and I was so bored living alone in an unknown city, living in a very tiny room at the rooftop of a building, with no TV set, with no radio, with nothing else to do but writing. So I started writing to kill my boredom. And like all the other books of mine, it was born without any previous work, without documentation, without a synopsis, without anything. So I just started writing without knowing what I was going to write on the next page. And I did this for 14 years after that, writing more than 1,500 pages, the whole trilogy. Yes. And I did this without any editing, writing by hand. All the trilogy is written by hand, without any editing. So it's the first draft. What you see here is the very first draft.
That is extraordinary.
Yes, and I just erased 2 or 3 words each 10 pages, let's say. But I never teared off a page. I never changed the order of the chapters or paragraphs. Nothing. The proof is in my own
handwritten notebooks. Is that right?
In my notebooks that I keep them for the unbelievers. I have to confess that I would be myself an unbeliever if somebody told me this story. But this is the way I wrote all my books. And I wrote the first part of the trilogy, which is called The Left Wing, in Amsterdam. Then I wrote the second part, which in my opinion is the best and the most important of the trilogy, in Berlin. And after that, in a few years, I started to write the third part in Stuttgart. So I wrote it abroad, being a foreigner among people that I didn't know, and it was the time of my life. It was the time of my life. It was the time when a writer is at his best, between 35 and 50 years old. And why, maybe you ask yourself, why the first part is called The Left Wing, no connection to politics,
You're right, yeah.
or with ideologies. Why the second is the body and the third is the right wing? This is because, in my mind, this trilogy is a butterfly. It's a trilogy in the shape of a butterfly.
It's represented on the cover of the.
So this is only
wing.
the left wing of the butterfly, and if you feel it doesn't fly, it's only normal, because you need 2 wings to fly. So I hope that in 2 years the wonderful Penguin Random House will finish publishing the whole trilogy, so it could fly.
That would be fantastic. And it's just so extraordinary hearing you discuss how you wrote it, because it does feel like there is a structure and symmetry, and the propulsion of the narrative moves towards building up to something. So to learn that you didn't, pre-plan or structure or have an ending in sight, I think that is
You know
so
what I
interesting.
had in mind when I started to write? I had in mind only 2 things. To write a book which was called Orbitor, so I had the word, I had the title, Orbitor. The word was so fantastic that I simply wanted to write a book called like that. And the second thing was to write a very big book, over 1,000 pages. So to be able to write the title horizontally on it, here on the on this part of the book.
The spine.
Yes, and I remember that before starting to write, I made myself a shoebox. I had some shoes there, and in that box, on the lid of it, I wrote with the capitals, blinding, orbitor, and this box in my mind was destined to contain notes, ideas on little pieces of paper. It remained empty for good. I never put any paper in it. Yes, because actually everything was in my mind, and to say more, everything was my mind. The whole trilogy was my mind, was my brain, and I didn't need any preparation for it because it was inside me. And when writing, I only write in the mornings for 2 days, for 2 hours, from 10 to 12, and I only write 1 page each session, let's say. So each day I wrote a page. The next day I read what I had written before, and I tried to write in the same key, like on a musical score, you know, and I didn't mind, and I didn't care about plot, about characters, because I knew that my mind is much more clever than I am, and much wiser than I am, and my mind should take care of that. So my mind will know what to do in writing this book. When writing this book, I needed all the time. I needed a sort of a almost religious trust, religious faith in my powers of writing. I knew that I'm every man. I'm a very, very usual person in my everyday life, but sometimes I can write. I don't know how to write, but sometimes I feel that I can write. And when I feel that, like an energy, like something immaterial, I would say, when I feel that I can write, I just start writing and let my mind take care of everything. Yeah.
I love in an interview once you described the writing process. I used the metaphor of like riding a race horse, where you felt like the writer is like the jockey who is just sort of hovering above because he's very small, and and then the process is how the book comes out.
It's how I feel. I feel like being more of an obstacle in the process of writing. You know, the jockey has to be very light and very small, and let his horse win the races. The horse itself, not the jockey. Jockey wins the races, and for that you have to let your horse, which is your mind, of course, let it free. Let it free. Let it choose the way it moves to be able to win. Otherwise, you embarrass your mind. Don't let it breathe, and your mind doesn't function well if you want to control everything. So I decided not to control anything in my books, which is valid for all my books, and let them free. Let them be themselves. Yeah.
And it's so interesting how Blinding now, it's in a sense had 3 lives to it, because it was first published in your native Romania in 1996, and then Sean Cotter's English translation actually first appeared in America in 2013, and now it's been published here in the UK in 2025. So does this feel very distant from you, or does it still feel like, do you still feel strongly connected to it?
Yes, it's a very good question, and I think that the books that are not very much grounded in history, in the present day, in actuality, actually these are the books that proved to be more resisting in time. So if you write about actuality, about the topics of the day, let's say, you can risk that after those things that you write about are forgotten, your books are also forgotten. That's why I tend to be rather detached from not only from the present day, but also from what we call reality, just for the book can resist in time. And if a book can also be read after 30 years from the time when the author wrote it, I think it's a very good thing. So my books, I'm happy that my books are still read, after so many years, after 3 decades since I have written some of them. And Blinding is, its history, it's in a way archetypal, I would say. I published it in my country, where I was already well known, but as a poet, not as a prose writer.
Right.
I started being a poet. I published, if I'm not wrong, 8 volumes of poetry, till I shifted to prose. At a certain moment, I decided that I won't write poetry anymore, because 8 volumes was enough for me. There are writers who repeat themselves, poets mainly, who repeat themselves all the time and get to write 30 volumes of poetry. Why? Why repeat yourself? When I felt that it was enough, enough was enough. And I started to write other kind of poetry, because I'm a poet and I cannot write anything but poetry, but in the shape of fiction, of prose, a narrative, which is a different job. It's very different from writing poetry, but it should also contain poetry if you want the people to read what you do, because poetry is actually the goddess of literature, in my opinion. Poetry is, for me, it's the climax of all knowledge. You can find poetry in mathematics, for example, when you talk about a beautiful equation. You find poetry in physics. You can find poetry in philosophy. Plato was a great poet, in my opinion, and so on. So I was known as a poet in my country, and this book and another one, Nostalgia, which is also published with Penguin now, surprised the people. The people said, "What's that? Cărtărescu is a poet. He is a reputed poet. He should have gone with poetry." But in a very short time, the people got used to my books of prose, and they were happy with them. At the same time, I published a small book which is not yet translated into English, which is called Travesti, and which became a sort of a cult book in my country. I can't wait to give the English-speaking readers this present, this gift, one of my best things that I've done. Okay. And after that, it was a big chance for me to be published with Archipelago Books in the States. The American edition was very beautiful, and I was very happy with it, but unfortunately my name was not well known abroad, universally, let's say. So because of that, the people didn't buy my books at first when I published them in the States, where the situation of the translated books. They are 0.0% from all the production. So the book had great reviews but didn't sell. So the wonderful publisher, Mrs. Schulman, who did the book, decided to stop there. She didn't take the burden to publish other 2 books which she considered that wouldn't sell. So we have so far only this volume in English, and I think the new edition published in Britain with Penguin Random House, came right on time. Right on time to revive this book, which I still consider my best book, my best book ever. A sort of, I said that it's a sort of a plane carrier of my humble fleet, the biggest and the most important book of mine so far.
Well, no, it's wonderful to see, and I think that I know there are very ardent fans of your work in the English-speaking world, who have been really hoping to see the next two books translated and published. And I think it's wonderful that some book awards like the Dublin Literary Award and the Booker International have been expanding your audience. But I want to go back to something you said about the poetry in your poetic use of language in the book, and how you see poetry in kind of mathematics. And because it's something I wanted to ask, in that there's a lot of terminology in this book that's scientific terminology that are referring to religious and philosophical theories, and so I was wondering, was it kind of mission or maybe kind of unconscious goal in writing the book to kind of fuse science and poetry in this way? Yeah.
Yes, also a very good question, because for me knowledge is a single block. We see knowledge as split in several directions. For example, we have sciences, we have theology, we have philosophy, we have poetry, we have arts, we have lots of other kinds of what we call with a single umbrella term, knowledge. And I have always felt this is untrue to split it into so many branches, because actually it's only one big stem. And this is why I started to make surfing, in a way, on all the fields of knowledge, without letting anything aside. I'm very curious. I'm a very curious person, and I read a lot. I'm an omnivorous reader. Usually, I don't know why the writers only read literature. I think it's very wrong. It's very wrong. A writer should not be a writer, actually, but somebody very interested in everything, the reality and unreality around him or her offers. Because I was born and I was gifted with the gift of living in the world. I feel the need and obligation to know everything about everything life offers. That's why I read all kinds of books. I read books of quantum physics, for example. It's a great passion of mine. Books about embryology. Books about, I don't know, metaphysics. Books about theology, about religions, and so on. All kinds of books. And all of them, you are right, are mixed together with all the others in my mind, and they pour in my books like a continuous flux or a stream of knowledge. A writer should be someone who is looking for the truth first, not someone who wants to publish books and sell them. Not someone who is waiting for prizes and for reviews, and for not someone who is playing the game, but someone who is humble and want to know everything. Writing a book is trying to know yourself and know the world around you. This is why a real writer is writing. And of course, the main and most important example is Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka, who did not consider himself a writer, but a searcher for the truth, for the truth about himself, his situation. So just because he was not a writer but a sentinel at the margins of language and at the margins of the known world, just because I love his work so much.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about influences as well, and I knew that you were influenced by Kafka and Proust,
Yeah.
but I wanted to ask if you were also influenced by Lewis Carroll at all, because in his Wonderland series, often his protagonist has different spatial relationships to the world of seeing it on a very small scale and a very large scale, and that is also so much present in your book, where we move from these big expansive spaces looking at the encompassing the whole galaxy, but then also there are moments of seeing the world from such a small perspective, and you reference towards the beginning of a dust mite, and within Solenoid there's a whole section of inhabiting the consciousness of a dust mite.
Yes.
So yeah, I was wondering if Carroll was an influence on you, perhaps.
Of course, actually, practically all the books that I have ever read influenced me up to the end. Even the books of my childhood, the books that we all read, like The Happy Prince, for example, and many others, The Count of Monte Cristo, for example, and many other books from my childhood and adolescence. But of course, the great classics and the classics of modernity, like Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and the Germans, Thomas Mann, and many others, Hermann Hesse, and the Austrians, Musil, and so on, they all influenced me a lot. And besides some huge Romanian writers that in the English-speaking language didn't have the chance to know so far, all of them influenced me a lot. But I have to confess that I don't have very much pleasure when reading realistic prose. Even if I respect Tolstoy, for example, or Golsorty, or I don't know, Balzac, I'm kind of reluctant to read them. I love the literature of imagination. Whether if I call it surrealism or onirism or postmodernism and so on, I love this kind of playing with the concept of reality, because many people consider that reality is something that we all know very well. It's the day by
Simply
day,
once you know from your senses.
life, yes.
Yeah.
But actually, reality is not what it seems to be. Our dreams at night are also real, are also part of reality. And our desires, our wishes, our hallucinations, our daydreams, all of them are part of what we experience, not lesser than the day-by-day reality. So I think that even if a book starts from reality, from history, from our immediate experience, they should take off at a certain moment. It's like a plane who starts to run on the runway, and then it takes off to the skies, to the heavens. I think each and every book should have this wish to touch the skies with its fingers, and to return with something blue on your fingerprints. Yes, and sometimes in few pages that I wrote, I had this feeling to have touched the sky with my fingers, and this is the most wonderful feeling that I can feel.
That's really beautifully put.
Yeah.
And before we move on to away from questions of influence, I had a very specific question because later on in the book, when Mircea is in a hospital and receiving treatment, he meets a man there who's in his 80s, who's called Ionescu. And I was wondering if this was a slight nod to the great Romanian-born writer Eugene Ionescu, or is that just a coincidence?
Well, it's only a coincidence because Ionescu is the most common family name in my country. It's like Brown or I don't know.
Yeah, Smith.
Smith, yeah. So it's only a coincidence, but you are right. Some great Romanian writers who are kind of well known in other countries. Yes. Well, there were some influences of my on my style. For example, Mircea Eliade, who was a great scholar, a great historian of religions, but also a fantastic writer, a great writer, who, of course, influenced me, or Mircea Cărtărescu, or I don't know, other very important philosophers and writers from Romania. But I think the greatest influences on my writing came from modernity and postmodernity. I mean, well, I have another great idol besides Kafka, who is Thomas Pynchon. In my opinion, he is the greatest writer living. Living today, still living and still
has
producing.
a new novel out,
Yes, he's still producing literature, which is amazing. He's 89, if I'm not wrong. So when I first read his fantastic works, V and The Crying of Lot 49 and Gravity's Rainbow and so on, Mason and Dixon, I was amazed and understood that you could write in a very different way and producing a very different effects, literary effects. So I started to imitate him a lot in texts that I never published because they were only imitations, and then I started to write pretty much influenced with his work. I only hope the influences are not direct but very, very much filtered through my own personality. And then I also love the South American literature, the great writers like Ernesto Sabato, like Borges, like I don't know, Cortázar, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Vargas Llosa, and so on. They also are very influential writers today, after more than 50 years since they did their great works, and I'm a big fan of them.
And there's still it's actually very exciting, I think, literary scene in South America, and still producing so many fascinating writers. Actually, just last night at the National Book Awards in America, the translated literature category was won by a South American writer called We Are Green and Trembling, which is a really fascinating historical novel, but also quite odd and almost surreal experience. So,
yes. Yeah. Well, they are a different kind of. I would say they are a different kind of people. The people from South America. I'm in love with South America. I visited mostly every country from this continent of miracles. And I love the people, I love the places, and I love the literature. I love their books because they write from all their body. Not they don't write with their brains or with their hearts. They write with their brains, hearts, sexes, feet, hands, and everything. They are, well, actually, some of them, the most gifted of them, are like a pen in the hand of a god. You know. Their whole body and soul are instruments for writing, and this is also my ideal in writing.
And to get back to this book and the content of it for a minute. So, as I mentioned, there is a figure in the book, Mircea, who the narrative continuously comes back to you as a moment when Mircea sat in his apartment window in Bucharest and looking out over the expanse of the city as well as the sky, and it keeps coming back to this moment. So I was wondering, what is your relationship to the Mircea in this book? Does it feel like an expression of you and your innermost being, or is it more like a fictional character you've created?
This trilogy is a triptych of my family. So the first volume is dedicated to my mother, and the mother, of course, let alone Mircea, but the mother is the main character. There, the mother my mother is still living. She's 96 now.
Oh, wow.
And she is the most important person. She's still the most important person in my life. I learned a lot from this peasant woman who only had 4 grades at school, but whom I owe everything, to whom I owe everything. And this book is this first part of my book is dedicated to her, but also, of course, the little Mircea is the main character who will develop very much in the second volume. And the third volume is dedicated to my father. So it's a triptych of my family. When Marcel Proust wrote his huge book à la cherche du temps perdu, the main character was called Marcel. So it was Proust and it wasn't Proust at the same time. It was an ideal development of his own image in his own eyes. Like in a journal, when actually the one who speaks is not the real person who writes, but a projection of him or of her. It's the same here. Mircea is myself and not myself. He's myself in many ways because he borrows my biography in a very big picture, but it's not myself in details. Mircea is an archetypal character. It's everything I wanted to be and couldn't be, and it's in a way it's a writer in development. Everything around him is a conspiration to make him a writer. To make him a writer just for writing this book. Just because if Mircea wouldn't failed to become a writer, this book didn't exist, and the characters in this book also didn't exist. So all the characters around Mircea conspire to make him a writer for their own right to live, and this is why Mircea is so important in the book. He will write the book. He is destined to write the book where he lives, actually. It's a sort of a paradox, a loop, a loop of logics. And in the second volume, you will find, which is going to be published in the spring of 2027. We have to wait a little.
Yeah.
But it's worth waiting because the second part is presenting Mircea as a child and as an adolescent with everything that I could put in a book, with all my powers of writing and of creation. So I'm very proud of the second part of my book. And the third part is very different, because it goes very deep in history. It's a sort of a satire, a Swift-like satire against the people who stole my youth. Because I lived for 39 years in a dictatorship, and it's my revenge against the tyrant, against the communist rule, against everything that I suffered. I have scars on my skin, and the third volume is about those scars, about what I experienced during that hellish times, and for that I used the harshest registers of language that I disposed of. For example, scatology, very hard sexual language. I have been accused of pornography in my country by that time, and so on. So I had no limits in expressing my anger, my fury against the people who stole my youth, who scarred me, and who tried to destroy me as a living and free being.
And that's definitely present in this book as well. There are traces of slogans on buildings, but you also refer to women whose hands have been mangled by working in factories with poor conditions, and so it's very much a shadow that is cast over the book of communism and an oppressive government.
Yes, but the third part is a real political book. It's my only political book that I wrote. I felt the need, and I had the duty to do it, a duty to myself. So it's not. Of course, it's also very imaginative and with lots of surrealistic topics, scenes, and so on. But fundamentally, it's a political book. Against dictatorship, against tyranny.
So, as you said, there are political elements in the books, and I would say that overall there's a kind of melancholy cast to the book. But I also want to highlight how I think there are humorous moments in it as well. A few examples are when young Mircea, he wants to get a prophylactic, which he doesn't really understand what it is, and his parents are embarrassed by that, and he imagines stone statues that are copulating with each other in a kind of orgy, and he thinks of the building that he lives in Bucharest as like the penis in of the city, and he is a spermatozoon that is within this building. So I was wondering, do you consciously incorporate humor into the narrative of the story to try to balance out, the more serious or melancholy bits, or does it just naturally emerge from writing a more surrealistic way?
Yeah, I'm glad that you noticed that. I have always considered that I have a good sense of humor, but the critics never mentioned that, because they were eager to surprise, to get the dark, melancholic, the surrealist side of my books. But actually, my books have always been also humoristic. They have always also a light side, a lighter side, irony, humor, puns, plays upon words, things like that. I think they can be seen as very funny also. And some of my books, which are not translated into English yet, are simply humoristic books. I have one of them called The Beautiful Strangers, which is also a small trilogy, consists of three stories full of humor, made for showing some grotesque misunderstandings, cultural misunderstandings, when you travel abroad. And you meet French people, you meet Italian people, who look at you like a kind of a peculiar insect. They try to understand you by using their vision on their own culture and their own world, and things don't fit, and from this the humor comes out, the humor of the situations. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely in those
So
cultural
talking
clashes.
about cliches and
mhm.
misunderstandings of this kind. Yes, it's also valid for a Solenoid,
Mhm.
which is a very dark book. It's my darkest book actually, because it's about the need to protest against old age, disease,
Mhm.
death, madness, and so on. Uh, the motto of this book could have been "Do not go gently into that good night,"
Mhm.
Dylan Thomas verse. But also, it is a book full of humor for the people who want to see it like that. Everything takes place in a school.
Mhm.
Uh, I have been myself a high school teacher for 10 years.
Mhm.
I worked with small kids, and it was the time of my life. I love kids, and I love to work with them. And of course, because of that, in this book there's a gallery of kinky, crazy teachers, professors. A gallery like in Fellini. Like in
Yeah.
some movies of Fellini, Amarcord, for example,
Mhm.
where there are also galleries of strange teachers. Funny, someone rude, but all of them unforgettable. I think all of us have this memory, like in Pink Floyd, like in Another Brick in the Wall, about crazy teachers who actually try to crash the personality of the children, of the pupil.
Mhm. And it's interesting you mentioned Fellini because actually I was thinking of Fellini a bit while reading your books because it feels like structurally it somewhat emulates a Fellini film as well, where you're following the lives of individual characters and the struggles that they are going through, but gradually there's, in his films and in your books, there's this building up to a kind of collective expression, it feels like, and which is uh, kind of a sense of liberation from individual troubles and in finding joint. So, like in Solenoid, there's a group of protesters that come together to protest against those things that you mention, and also in Blinding, towards the end of the book, it builds up to groups of people that come together in this way.
Yeah. Yes, there are things in common with Fellini in my books. The most important of them is that my books are always dealing with the humble people, with people from the lower classes, poor people who struggle
Mhm.
to make a living. Just because my family was like that, my parents were simple workers who came from the countryside in the times of forced industrialization of my
Mhm.
country. So they came to Bucharest. My parents came to Bucharest from the countryside, and they led a very humble life. I had no books in my home, for example, till I was 10. And then I started to borrow books from a library, and then make my own library at home.
Mhm.
My beginnings were not very favorable for
Mhm.
for becoming a writer.
Mhm.
And it's this small popular world that is so interesting in Fellini's movies, in Tarkovsky's movies, many of them, and in Jodorowsky, for example. And they also are to be found in my books.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I'd like to discuss a bit more the surreal quality of your books because it's it's like you allow to freely blend memory with dreams,
Yeah.
fantasies, and hallucinations, and sometimes it does feel like utter chaos, and I'm often wondering what is going on. But I think through that, sometimes there emerges a lot of that humor, just because it's so
Mhm.
surprising what is happening, and so I did frequently laugh out loud through
Mhm.
reading both of these books. And at one point in Blinding, you write, "Revelation is possible." So, what do you think can be revealed by straying so far from reality in this way? Or perhaps it might be better to ask, what are the limitations of realistic narrative? I mean, I know you touched on that already,
Yes.
but yeah.
Well, the most important philosophical problem or thing is the relationship between what we call reality and our consciousness. What's the connection? Why we have to have this huge unknown thing that is reality, and why can we perceive it with our own consciousness? What is reality actually? We have to answer this question before talking about realism, realistic literature, and so on. What's reality? And in Solenoid, I got to the conclusion that reality is pain. Reality is pain. When we feel pain, we are in reality. If we don't feel pain, we are in dreams, we are in other worlds, we are in a video game, we are everywhere. The test for if you dream, and sometimes in a dream you wonder, am I dreaming or am I living in reality? I don't know. And then you pinch yourself, and if it hurts, you are in reality. If it doesn't hurt, you are dreaming. So pain in every aspect is a test for reality. The thing exists only they hurt us. If they don't hurt us, they disappear. For example, you have a painting on the wall. If that painting tells something to you, if it impresses you, if it leaves a scar on your brain, it exists and you will always remark it. If it doesn't, like the paintings in the hotel rooms, for example, you don't notice them. If you leave the hotel room and somebody asks you, was a painting on the wall there, you couldn't answer. You don't remember. Because it didn't hurt you, didn't impress you, didn't leave a trace of memory in your brain. This is why pain is so important in our lives, to make us feel living, feel a living person, a living being. I'm besides all kinds of peculiar things concerning myself, I'm also a gamer. And I like to play video games. I do it for relaxation, not quite every day, but once or twice a week. And it's so crazy that when you play a game, you are inside it. Let's talk about a shooter. You shoot monsters, for example, or people, or I don't know what other characters, and you are hurt by them. How important is that you don't feel any pain? It's so important. You feel safe all the time. You are not like in a war, like in the Ukraine war, for example, where you risk being shot all the time and to be hurt, to have a limb tear off, and so on. But when you are in a video game, you are not in reality. You are in a domain where pain doesn't exist, which is so important for that.
And I love how you do. It's from how we've been talking so far, you might think that this book is just filled with sort of scientific and philosophical references, but you do also occasionally have popular cultural references, because you do reference video games and Mario and Luigi, and I love how you blend all of your experience and thoughts into that. But as you said, reality is pain, and that makes me think of how it connects with sort of Eastern philosophy and Buddhist philosophy of the line that existence is suffering, and which you do touch upon in the novel as well, and many different religious references and ideas. I mean, primarily Christian, but especially with Mircea's mother is even called Maria, and so could you speak a bit more about how religion is sort of incorporated and influences your writing in that way?
So first, the popular culture. I taught popular culture
right.
at the university, and also creative writing lessons and so on, courses and so on. I'm very fond of the popular culture. When I was young, of course, even in the Eastern countries, the pop music, the rock music mainly, was very popular, extremely popular. It was a intense commerce with vinyls, with discs of rock music. Of course, not original, because nobody could afford an original disc, an original LP by that time. But there were some Indian copies of them that were bought and sold all the time underground in my country. And there were also huge rock groups in Romania, like Red and Black or Phoenix and many others, who in the conditions of a dictatorship still gave concerts on stadiums. So they had tens of thousands of fans. It was a very intense flower power movement in Romania by that time, and we spent our time listening to rock music, listening to Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the Beatles and so on, and we took our ideology and our way of living from the lyrics of the songs and so on. Later on, I translated a whole book of lyrics by Bob Dylan.
Oh, wow.
So I'm the translator of Bob Dylan in Romania, and also the translator of Leonard Cohen. And it was a great pleasure for me to translate their works. And talking about Bob Dylan's lyrics, I wrote a preface of that collection where I said that Bob Dylan should and will get the Nobel Prize for Literature, and in 2 years he took the prize. So I was a kind of a prophet. Yeah.
That's
so
great.
I'm very, very, very fond of rock music. And then talking about mysticism and religion and Tibetan and Buddhism philosophy, I'm also very keen to read everything that I can find about them. One of my favorite books ever is Bhagavad Gita, from the Indian tradition and so on. And I think the Eastern spirituality and the Eastern poetry, considering the Japanese poetry, the Zen literature, the haikus and so on, all of them fascinated me and made me, in a way, I feel like they made me a more profound person. I love to read this kind of old books of wisdom, like the Bible, which is not only a religious book, but it's the biggest novel ever written, in my opinion, and it contains some of the best lyrics, best poetry ever written, and also the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and many others. All of them full of the Tao Te King and so on, full of wisdom,
That's fascinating to hear, and I could go on and on talking about this because I had so many more questions for us, but we've been going for quite a while already. Now, you mentioned that a translation of the second book in the trilogy will be coming out in 2026. 7. Is
Yeah.
that also translated by Sean Cotter, or is it another
No, it's
translator?
not translated by Sean Cotter, because Sean Cotter is very busy now by translating my latest book, my latest novel, which is called Theodoros,
Ah, okay.
and
Interesting.
which I published 3 years ago, and it's already translated in some important languages, in French, in Dutch, in Italian, in Spanish, and other languages, and which also was extremely well received everywhere, in Germany, for example. So he works on Theodoros, but Blinding is going to be translated by Gabi Ray, a Romanian origin translator who lives in England.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, yeah, I really look forward to that. And and it feels like, yeah, your books are getting more momentum in the West. They're being translated more frequently, and you've won and been nominated for a number of prizes now, as I mentioned. And the great author Olga Tokarczuk, she's a fan of your work, and she's a Nobel Prize winner. And you mentioned Bob Dylan winning the Nobel Prize, and it has frequently been mentioned in the past several years that that you might be a possible candidate for the Nobel Prize for Literature. And who knows how these things work, and decided there's lots of things going on behind the scenes. And you mentioned before that you don't write, for the accolades. That's not your primary drive. But is this something you've thought about, and how would you feel if you actually won the Nobel Prize?
For me, it's very, very simple to say that to be considered worthy of the Nobel Prize is a great honor, but to really get it, it's a luck. It's just luck, a matter of luck, because it's like flipping a coin. There are so many wonderful writers worthy of the Nobel Prize that the Nobel Committee has l'embarras de choix, as we say. It's like choosing at random the winner. It could be the real winner, but it could be many other writers that are worthy to it. So I'm very happy and grateful to the people that, in a way, thought that I might get the prize sometime, but I still say that's enough. I don't want to really get it. I like that people praise what I do, but it's enough for me. Yeah.
It's a kind of double-edged sword, isn't it? Because I know, it obviously brings authors to a much wider audience, but also makes more demands on the author themselves, more pressure, more. Yeah.
Yes, it's absolutely right. It's changing your life for good, and I don't know if I want to change my life that I lead right now, because I have everything I need. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. But I'm sure your books will continue to receive more award attention in whatever form, but also really importantly more readers and a wider readership. And I would highly recommend reading both Blinding and Mircea's other work, because I find your work so fascinating, so unlike anything else I've ever read, and they're books that I know that I will continue to go back to and read over again, because I know there's so much more to discover in them, much more to think about. And it has been such a pleasure and a privilege speaking with you here today. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you so much. It's the same feeling that I have. It was a very good discussion, and I thank you for it.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. Well, now, as an extra little bonus thing, I think we are going to have a little look around the Penguin Classic Libraries to hear Mircea discuss some of his books. So we will now go on to that.
We are now in the publishing house, the famous one, Penguin Random House, and I'm surrounded by the greatest books ever written, and I have the very difficult mission to choose some of them, to present them for the audience, the public that watch us. So I chose almost at random 5 books that I consider a must to read, from all the cultures and from all the epochs. So I would start with the grandfather of modernity in fiction, in literature, who is of course Gustave Flaubert. And from his fantastic and vast work, I chose a lesser known novel, a historical novel called Salammbô, which in my opinion is the best historical novel ever written, and which presents the fall of Cartagena in a very strong, symbolist and realistic style. Salammbô is important for me because it influenced very much my latest book, also a pseudo-historical novel called Theodoros. The fluent and visionary style of Salammbô just got into my book and give it the shining that it needed. Of course, one of my favorites ever is Marcel Proust with his work Remembrance of Things Past, a huge book about memory. Actually, Proust reinvented the concept of memory in this book more than any psychologist or philosopher. Actually, talking about memory and not mentioning this book is nonsense. So it's a huge book about the life of Marcel, the main character, who is and is not Marcel Proust, who experiences a huge range of details from everything that he lived, everything that he noticed, everything he saw, he heard in his life. And where the memory didn't function, Proust invented memories for the delight of his readers. It's an epic poem about what memory is, about what small and minute details produce the ghosts of the memories. Virginia Woolf is of course a very well known writer. I like her whole work, but mostly some of her novels, like Orlando, like Mrs. Dalloway, or like the paramount book from everything she wrote, which is The Waves. The Waves is more like a poem than a novel. It's a great symphony of 6 voices, each one an archetype voice. My favorite is Rhoda from all of them, but also Jeannie and all the others, who see life from a different angle. Each of them see life from a certain personality, character, culture, and so on. All of them are different but complementary, and they have a sort of a dance around an absent character who is Percival, who is the hero. The hero is missing here in this novel, but all the 6 spots of light try to create him, try to revive him in the order of the world. A fantastic and beautiful book. Kafka is my favorite of all times, and not only my favorite. I think most of the very good writers that are writing now have this idol, Franz Kafka, who is in the popular imagination the author of only one book, only one story, The Metamorphosis, where the main character, Gregor Samsa, wakes up transformed into a bug. But this is only popular culture, it's a meme, because Kafka hated that story himself and praised other books and other stories that he wrote. In my opinion, his very best book is The Castle, which is a winter novel. I think winter is the main character of this novel. Everything takes place in a generic and continuous winter, the winter of the spirit, the winter of the soul, in a way. And of course, the oniric trend in literature has in this novel it's a perfect book, the perfect book in the oniric style. Kafka is singular among all the authors. He never called himself a writer because he thought he was a follower of the truth. Finally, Ginsberg, who was the hero of the Beat Generation in the 50s and the 60s, together with Gary Snyder, Philip Whalen, Gregory Corso, and many other great poets. But he's the greatest of them all, in my opinion, because he's the inheritor, in a way, of Walt Whitman in the American poetry. So he's a new Walt Whitman in the previous century, who wrote, I think, pieces of energy, not only poetry, but energy lines in at least two great poems, Howl and Kaddish, who are, of course, well known by everyone. He has this power of changing everything in poetry. He's a visionary poet coming from a Jewish tradition as well as an American tradition, and reinventing, in a way, poetry. Howl was a great influence on my poems and on the poems of my whole generation, which in Romania is called the Blue Jeans generation, the generation of the 80s. Ginsberg was forbidden by that time in Romania, but his books were very popular underground. We were marginalized and living underground in a way, and we were reading Ginsberg's poems all the time. The Sunflower Sutra, for example, was the most influential on the spirit of my generation.
Thank you very much.